Hello and welcome to this video, which is a companion to this month's Space Ace article in Reach Impact, entitled Honing Your Razor's Edge. I am Zilch, an instructor pilot from USC's Training Command. Today I'm going to try and break you of the habit of stat sheet dogfighting, as I call it, and try to attenuate the debate about which fighter is the so-called best. This kind of thinking, in my opinion, contributes to lazy flying, maladaptive tactics, and a complete reliance on the ship to win the fight for you, which is often a fatal mistake. As any true student of the dogfight knows, it is going to be the pilot, more than the crate they're flying in, that determines the outcome. And if you're here, I assume you're one of that number. And so, we'll be walking right past the overwhelming firepower of the Super Hornet, straight past the blistering speed of the M50, and right up to the ship that's going to train you to fly at your absolute best, the P-52 Merlin. This ship is dogfighting boiled down to its most basic level, a true pilot ship, and a real seat-of-the-pants, stick-and-rudder ship that, in the right hands, will truly surprise any under-trained opponent when they write you off as a minimal threat. With training, you're going to show them that the most fearsome weapon of all is not a nasty cannon, a large missile, or high-powered shields, but a well-honed pilot who wears his or her ship like tailored clothing and flies it to the absolute edge of its performance capabilities. You still may not believe me, so let's hop in this nasty little scrabber and I'll show you what I mean. Here we are in a standard Vandal Swarm match, which doesn't present too great of a challenge here, but will suffice for our purposes. It is a great place to start off when testing a new starfighter setup. Our Merlin, while not a heavy hitter, is small, responsive, and easy to control, which enables us to easily put the ship where it needs to be to engage our targets, assuming we're flying it correctly. It also naturally flies at just below the standard G limits for human beings, so you can apply full influence across all axes usually, without risk of blackout or red out. This is ideal for training, but also perfect for building confidence in your ship, and allowing the Merlin to be flown at the edge of its envelope, which you'll need to do to survive engagements considering all of its disadvantages. At the risk of sounding mystical, I do suggest flying this ship, and most others, by thinking of your control inputs in the ship's motion as a kind of blended flow, rather than a disjointed series of abrupt, discrete maneuvers. This will help keep the ship under your direct control, maintain it within its handling limits and your G resistance, and help build that sense of connectedness that's so critical to the effortless, coordinated flying style we're striving. I've kept the stock loadout here of our ship's proprietary Size 2 Tiger Streak Gatling gun and a pair of Size 1 M3A laser cannon. In almost any other ship, I'd ditch the MA series guns as worthless, but in this case they do match the ship well and, more importantly, serve our immediate task of training you to aim well and make the most of your shots. If you have a bad habit of relying on spraying space with large guns and hoping some of it hits enough to kill your target, this ship will break that habit right quick. Firepower is enough to kill fighters, but low enough to be unforgiving of sloppy aim. To destroy targets, you'll need to be accurate, get a feel for your ship's motion relative to your targets, and waste no shots or firing opportunities. Don't worry, it'll come naturally with mindful practice. If and when you transition back into your heavily armed ship, you'll find that your guns magically cause enemies to explode left and right, and then you can actually take full advantage of that nasty loadout you bring. You'll find that this ship is easy to control, but unforgiving of sloppy flying in combat. Its shields and armor will not hold up to many hits. You can therefore take advantage of the easy handling characteristics to keep your mind off of your ship and your eyes outside of the cockpit, watching your environment and your opponents, which is what you should be doing anyway. Your best armor, then, is situational awareness, or SA as we call it, and solid evasion skills, which again, you'll naturally develop with mindful practice, keeping your head on a swivel, and flying your ship at or near its limits until it's safe. Critical limitation on the Merlin, though, isn't its weaponry or shields, but its complete lack of regenerating boost fuel. If you normally fly a zoomy ship, and are accustomed to abusing your ship's booster and afterburner to get into and out of trouble, again, the Merlin will break you of that habit and force you to think faster than your opponent rather than zoom faster. This training will be apparent when you transition back into your speed demon and magically find out that you have a lot more flying control and initiative when boosting at high speed, and that you can literally fly rings around slower opponents with minimal stress. For now, though, you'll need to rely on the Merlin's native unboosted agility and speed, which is quite snappy, but not really enough to make or break combat at will like you could in a racing ship. And this is the crux of today's training. I want you to start thinking ahead of your ship. This is the first step toward our ultimate goal of thinking ahead of your opponent, anticipating fluid conditions, being in the right place and time to fire. Although you need to use boost and afterburner inevitably, you should do so sparingly, and think of the Merlin's boost fuel as a finite countermeasure to evade fire or obstacles when necessary. Yes, the fuel may eventually run out, but as they say, it's better to be out of fuel than out of ship. Speaking of countermeasures, you'll notice that as of now, this B-52 carries 0 of them. What then do you do when a missile gets fired at you? I'll show you that in the next segment, which is dedicated to this information. For now, update the controls of your Merlin and get a good feel for what it can and can't do, since you'll need to have a basic feel for this when the missiles start coming in.
Zero hostile contacts remaining.
Here we are facing off against a more capable ship, once I can find it here, a Hornet Ghost flown by our aggressor pilot Talon. As I wrote in the article, the ideal orientation to defend against missiles is with your ship flying perpendicular to the missile's flight path. Of course, in combat, the situation is never that pretty, and you're going to find that sometimes the best you can do is get as close to that 90-degree angle off as possible. You'll find, though, that often good enough is good enough, and if you apply some timely evasive turns, your probability of survival will jump up substantially. Remember, though, that there are no certainties in combat, only probabilities. Therefore, our goal here is obviously to dodge the missile, but keep in mind that even perfect evasives aren't perfect. They only really increase your chances. But do not let this stop you from putting your entire effort into this training, though. The difference between a safe, cozy landing later on and a flaming fireball are often measured in fractions of seconds. So, under ideal conditions, we're going to first locate the missile. If it's not obvious in our canopy, we're going to quickly acquire the missile on our ship's radar. In this case, in the Merlin, it's going to look like a small orange plus sign, so keep an eye out for that. Remember that each ship's UI will be a different symbology, but the concept will be similar no matter what we're flying in, okay? Once you locate the incoming missile, you're going to want to lock your eyes onto it and get it as close as you can to flying to 90 degrees angle off of it. This can mean you're looking over your wing, like this, if the missile was coming off from our port at about 9 o'clock, or we could also point our gun sight at it and strafe to the left or to the right, or even up or down, as long as our direction of travel is perpendicular to the incoming missile. We're going to create that perpendicular pattern. As the missile approaches, right about the moment it feels like you need to, you're going to break into it, turn toward it. So if it was coming in from our 9 o'clock here, and then right about when it gets real close, like right about before it's going to hit us, we're going to turn as hard as we can into it. And we can use our boost or our afterburner as needed. And it's going to freak us out a lot, and it's going to take a lot of practice to figure out exactly when to make that turn. Again, that's what simulations are for. Once that happens, hopefully we're going to make a turn into the missile like this. It's going to fly around behind us, and we're going to reacquire it with our eyeball on the other side of it. As the missile swings back around to try and re-engage us, we're going to rinse and repeat the process until the missile explodes. Sounds easy, maybe. And it's actually not that bad. If you stay calm and get a feel for how your ship handles and how far it drifts before turning, you're going to be a lot better off. Again, we're going to be learning to do this without countermeasures, since evasion is going to be the foundation of any good missile defense. If you plan on using countermeasures as well, I suggest popping them right before you start your turn into the missile. This will hopefully cause the warhead to hit the countermeasure rather than you and explode, which will free you up to punish your attacker more quickly than had you waited for the missile to expire on its own. So let's start the live fire exercise, and I'll show you what I mean a few times so you can get the idea. Okay, live fire exercise. Dust Talon here will be taking pot shots at us, and we're going to see if we can evade them. And thankfully he's flying the Hornet Ghost, which means that we are not going to be able to see where they're coming from, which is a really good simulation. Alright, fire when ready. Perfect. Okay, so here it comes from our 9 o'clock. That was successful evasion. Okay. Thankfully that missile doesn't have too much life in it. Alright, anytime you're ready. That footage was a little better. As you can see, you can turn the same way twice. You don't need to change direction. And a lot of times you can conserve more speed by turning the same way more than once.
Warning.
And that's what happens when you fail. Notice I wasn't able to keep my eyes on the missile and it just smacked into the hull.
Stand by for reintegration.
Good shot, by the way.
Do what I can.
Alright, let's see about a head-on missile shot here, if you don't mind.
Got it.
And in this instance, what we're going to do is try and break away from it and into
Turns out, so I'll be there shortly.
Alright, so he's going to fire, and instead of turning into it at the last second, we're going to turn away and hopefully cause it to zoom behind us. We'll see how well that happens in practice.
Fire away.
Charging.
Not effective. Now, had I used boost, that might have worked a little better.
Shields charging.
Okay, I'll give you another one.
Alright, surprise me. This looks like it's going to be coming from dead astern, which is the least desirable position to be fired upon from, so... Yep, there we go.
Fire away.
A lot more control this time. Notice he fired from farther away, which gives us a lot more time to react.
Charge of shields complete.
Incoming.
I lost sight of it. Whoa. Sometimes you can get by without keeping your eyes on it by looking really closely at your radar. And, oh, here we go, another one. That one came real close.
Charging.
Even if you can't fully dodge the missile, it's worth breaking away as hard as possible.
That was my last one.
If it explodes, if it doesn't hit you and explodes nearby, it's going to do less damage than it would have had it been a direct strike. Like, that was pretty close. But that should conclude the exercise. You get a general idea.
That was the last one, man.
Alright, that's perfect. I think we got what we need here. So I think that should conclude the exercise and give you a general idea of what to expect when missiles are flying in. In reality, it's not going to look that pretty. But you get the idea, and it'll give you a good place to start from. Anyway, hope this helps you, and
Charge of shields
happy
complete.
hunting.